The NBA is standing on unstable ground, at a crossroads that threatens its competitive integrity. And the danger isn't coming from outside forces or market pressure, it's coming from within. A small, tightly connected group inside the league has quietly consolidated more power than ever before. They've learned how to bend the system, reshape outcomes, and steer franchises in their favor. At the center of it all is Klutch Sports, led by Rich Paul and, by extension, LeBron James. What started as a player representation agency has grown into something far more influential and far more disruptive. Klutch now operates less like an advocate for players and more like a power broker, one that destabilizes franchises, shortens careers, and erodes the league's collective bargaining balance. While the agency positions itself as the vanguard of quote-unquote player empowerment, the evidence suggests a darker reality, a system of quote star empowerment, where the fiduciary duties owed to secondary clients and the competitive interest of teams are sacrificed on the altar of LeBron James's immediate gratification. This has turned into something way closer to a cartel. Franchises get strong-armed, players get used, careers get tossed aside, and the league pretends everything's fine as long as the stars keep smiling for the cameras. This quote shadow front office, utilizing public pressure, media manipulation, and destabilizing trade demands to engineer rosters. Nobody faxes trade requests anymore. You float them on podcasts. The latest salvo was fired on the Game Over with Max Kellerman and Rich Paul podcast, a platform that allows the Klutch CEO to shape narratives without the friction of objective journalism. During a segment discussing the Lakers' roster construction, Paul explicitly floated a trade scenario, sending Austin Reeves to the Memphis Grizzlies in exchange for Jaren Jackson Jr.
I would probably be targeting the Memphis Grizzlies as a trade partner
For?
Jaren Jackson.
Yeah, that'd be a great fit.
I would.
For whom?
Well, that's the thing, because you got to figure out the package. This comes with
Reeves.
This comes with a very unemotional attachment because Austin is beloved, which he should be.
But he's about to get
he's
paid.
He's an underdog. And here's the thing, if there's a world where you can do what's best for your team and do what's best for Austin, because Austin deserves to get paid right now.
Just like that, no warning, no filters, no shame. This was not a casual observation from an analyst. It was a tactical deployment of influence from the most powerful agent in the sport. He dressed it up as, quote, basketball logic, framed the move as a, quote, basketball decision, arguing that the Lakers, in building around Luka Doncic and LeBron James, needed defense. Said Triple J doesn't want to rebuild. Translation, Reeves is the piece we're willing to throw in the fire. It signaled to the entire league that Reeves was available, effectively lowering his market value and creating immediate friction between the player and the franchise. Only problem? Reeves ain't even a Klutch client. The impropriety of this act cannot be overstated. In agent culture, that's crossing a line. Austin Reeves is represented by Aaron Riley and Reggie Berry of AMR Agency. For an agent to publicly advocate for the trade of a rival agency's client is unheard of. You don't publicly shop another agency's player. You especially don't do it when he's in a contract year. It was a, quote, backstabbing attempt designed to sacrifice Reeves' stability to solve the defensive deficiencies of a roster constructed by Klutch's previous interventions. That wasn't commentary. That was a message to the league. He's available. The timing of Paul's comments reveals the calculated nature of the slimy practices by Klutch Sports. Austin Reeves was in the midst of a career-defining season. He was balling. A career year and a contract year where his performance would dictate his financial future. Every exec in the league knew his next contract was about to be massive. Then Paul labels him expendable. In the NBA, perception is money. Once a guy is seen as trade bait, teams stop viewing him as a cornerstone, and suddenly, that $200 million ceiling starts shrinking real quick. League executives viewed Reeves as a future max or near max player, with contract expectations approaching $200 million in total value. In the high-stakes world of NBA contract negotiations, perception is currency. By publicly labeling Reeves as a trade chip, Paul was not just talking basketball, he was undercutting Reeves' leverage in Los Angeles. If the Lakers believe Reeves is the piece that must be moved to salvage LeBron's twilight years, they are less likely to offer him a full max extension. From a business standpoint, the move was a direct assault on Reeves' earning potential. It prioritized the immediate defensive needs of LeBron James to cover for his own non-existent defense over the long-term financial security of a young player who had done everything right by the franchise. The trade suggestion wasn't just reckless, it was a financial hit job, all so LeBron could get a rim protector to clean up behind him. The tension engineered by Paul's comments spilled over into the physical realm in a manner rarely seen in professional sports. Reeves' agent, Reggie Berry, confronted Rich Paul at half court during a nationally televised game. That never happens. In the insular world of sports agencies, conflicts are typically handled in private phone calls or quiet boardroom meetings. For Berry to check Paul in full view of the cameras and the crowd was a deliberate signal. Berry was protecting his client from being treated as a pawn in Klutch's hypothetical trade machine, and it exposed the Lakers for what they'd become, a team split between the Klutch orbit and everyone else just trying to survive it. The logic behind the trade proposal, acquiring Jaren Jackson Jr., further illuminates the shadow GM role Paul plays. Jackson Jr., a defensive stalwart, is theoretically the perfect complement to an aging LeBron James. However, Paul's public pursuit of him ignores the reality of team assets and salary cap mechanics, acting instead as a wish list that puts pressure on the Lakers' actual general manager, Rob Pelinka. By floating Triple J, Paul effectively set a standard for the trade deadline. If Pelinka fails to acquire Jackson Jr. or a player of similar caliber, he is seen as failing LeBron. If he does trade Reeves, he angers the fan base and mortgages the future. It is a heads-I-win, tails-you-lose scenario for the front office, orchestrated entirely by an agent who technically has no official role in team management. LeBron, right on schedule, denied involvement. I don't think anyone believed LeBron would have said, "Yeah, I floated the idea to Rich," or "Rich does as he is told." No, but instead he said, "Rich is his own man," said they never talked about it. And maybe on paper that works, but in real life, nobody in the world buys that. This denial rings hollow. The relationship between James and Paul is not merely professional, it is symbiotic and spans over 2 decades. They are business partners, childhood friends, and the dual architects of the player empowerment era. The notion that Paul would publicly advocate for trading a key teammate of his most important client without at least tacit approval strains credulity. Paul doesn't sneeze without knowing how it affects LeBron. That's not disrespect, that's reality. He floats the test balloons. If they pop, LeBron denies involvement. If they float, the trade happens. It is a cynical manipulation of public discourse that allows James to maintain his benevolent king persona while his agent ruthlessly clears the board of unwanted pieces. The audacity of the Reeves trade rumor birthed a powerful counter-narrative. Maybe Reeves ain't the problem, maybe LeBron is, because everything has to revolve around him. Every move, every sacrifice, every panic trade. LeBron James is the actual impediment to the Lakers' success and long-term health. LeBron's presence now stifles the development of a cohesive team culture. His insistence on win-now moves, like the disastrous Westbrook trade, has depleted the team's assets. Reeves represents the modern NBA, young, efficient, and on an upward trajectory. Trading him for a defensive specialist to maximize a 40-year-old LeBron is viewed by many as malpractice. Trading LeBron, if you can convince him not to exercise his no-trade clause, would essentially cut the head off the snake, move James to a contender for draft capital, keep Reeves and the young core, and free the franchise from the grip of Klutch Sports. Reeves is the future, and LeBron time is up. Trade the star, keep the team. To understand the Reeves incident, one must understand the machine that produced it. Klutch Sports is not a traditional agency. It is a disruptor that has reshaped the landscape of the NBA through a unique blend of personal loyalty, aggressive conflict of interest, and the leveraging of a singular superstar's gravity. In 2002, Paul met LeBron selling vintage jerseys out of the trunk of his car. This interaction would change the trajectory of sports business. While Klutch markets this as a triumphant tale of American meritocracy, the outsider storming the gates of the establishment, it can also be viewed as the root of the agency's perceived unprofessionalism. Paul did not ascend through the rigorous, regulated pathways of law school or corporate management. He was handpicked by a prodigy. This lack of traditional institutionalization is often why he says stupid shit and is the reason for the agency's disregard for norms. Rich Paul's story gets sold like a movie script. Jersey hustler meets superstar, beats the system. But the flip side is this: he never came up inside the system, so he never respected its rules. Klutch Sports functions as a vehicle for LeBron James to act as a player owner, a violation of the CBA. Players are strictly prohibited from holding an equity interest in an agency to prevent conflicts of interest. For example, a star player funneling teammates to his agency to control their contracts and extract fees. In 2017, the NBA formally investigated whether James held a stake in Klutch Sports. The investigation concluded he did not. Despite the legal clearance, the functional reality suggests a distinction without a difference. James refers to the agency as family. It's known that it's really LeBron who recruits for Rich Paul. If James is the de facto owner or chief recruiter, then every negotiation Klutch enters is tainted by his influence. The Reeves incident suggests that if you don't sign with Klutch, or if you stand in the way, you become a target. The Klutch business model is predicated on the brotherhood, a tight-knit circle of trust that ostensibly protects players from the predatory nature of owners. However, the dark side of this model is that it demands absolute fealty. And if you fall out of favor, you don't just lose leverage, you disappear. The bodies. Nerlens Noel lost $58 million, ignored calls, dropped to minimum deals. That's not tough business, that's neglect. Ben Simmons. Mental health became a chess move. The league paid the price in credibility. Montrezl Harrell. Signed cheap, used quick, traded faster. Klutch careers age like milk unless you're in the inner circle. The acquisition of Anthony Davis stands as the magnum opus of Klutch Sports' aggressive strategy. It was a masterclass in leverage, but it was achieved through gangster tactics that burned bridges and fundamentally altered the relationship between teams and agencies. In January 2019, with the New Orleans Pelicans season in full swing, Rich Paul publicly declared that Anthony Davis would not sign a contract extension and requested a trade. This was a direct violation of NBA rules prohibiting public trade demands. The league fined Davis $50,000, a sum that Paul likely viewed as a negligible cost of doing business. The darkness of this move lay in its intent to destroy the Pelicans' leverage. By announcing that Davis wanted out and specifically leaking that he wanted to go to the Lakers, Paul ensured that other teams, like the Celtics, would be hesitant to offer their best assets for a rental. The demand turned the Pelicans season into a circus. Davis was booed by home fans, and the toxicity in the locker room became unbearable. In a surreal turn, Davis began leaving the arena in the middle of games with Rich Paul, creating visuals that humiliated the franchise. It was a scorched earth policy designed to make the situation so untenable that the Pelicans would be forced to capitulate to the Lakers just to end the nightmare. The coordination between LeBron James and Klutch during this period was brazen. James openly spoke about how amazing it would be to play with Davis, fueling tampering charges. While the league could not prove a conspiracy, the sequence of events, Davis hiring Klutch, James praising Davis, Paul demanding the trade, followed a script that felt entirely pre-written. It solidified the perception that the Lakers roster was being built not by Rob Pelinka, but by a shadow front office operating out of Klutch headquarters. If the Davis trade was the shadow GM's greatest victory, The Russell Westbrook trade was its most catastrophic failure. It serves as the definitive counter-argument to the idea that player empowerment leads to better basketball decisions. The Lakers front office reportedly resented the pressure from Klutch that led to the trade. It exposed the dysfunction of a team where the superstar's agent has more influence over roster construction than the scouting department. The accumulated weight of these incidents, Reeves, Noel, Simmons, Davis, Westbrook, forms my basis that Klutch Sports is bad for the league argument. It is not just that Klutch is aggressive, it is that their methods corrode the foundational trust required for a sports league to function. The Reeves rumor is a prime example, utilizing media connections to devalue a non-family member to benefit the family patriarch. It creates an environment where the agency is actively working against the cohesion of the team its biggest client plays for. Klutch isn't built on balance, it's built on loyalty. Collusion in the NBA is strictly defined as teams conspiring together. However, the behavior of Klutch Sports borders on reverse collusion, a centralized player power structure that manipulates the market. The Klutch model is illegal because LeBron's involvement in recruiting essentially makes him a partner in the agency. While unproven in court, the perception of illegality is toxic. It creates a belief that the game is rigged. The Austin Reeves incident was the tipping point. It revealed that as long as LeBron James remains a Laker, the franchise will be held hostage by the whims of Rich Paul. The Lakers should not trade Austin Reeves. They should not trade their future to appease a shadow GM. To remove the slimy influence of Klutch Sports and restore organizational sanity, the most logical basketball move is cutting ties with Klutch Sports at the end of the season, thereby dismantling the shadow government and returning the franchise to the principles of meritocracy and team-first basketball, not out of hate, not out of disrespect, out of survival. As long as LeBron is a Laker, Klutch runs the room. As long as Klutch runs the room, young players like Reeves are disposable. The Reeves situation wasn't an accident, it was policy. And in the game of Klutch, there are only two roles. You're either the king or you're the piece getting pushed off the board. Like, subscribe, share, and maybe even hype the video. Let me know if you agree with my sentiments that Klutch Sports is bad for the league. Thanks for watching.